State Representative Stephanie Klick of North Richland Hills. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So why should Republicans and other voters vote for you over your opponent, David Lund?
You know, I'm a conservative with a proven track record. I've accomplished big bills that have made a difference in this state. I've been very involved in passing pro-life legislation, working on border security. I was the joint author on the bill that banned gender modification of kids.
And what are your proudest accomplishments?
Probably a number of the life bills. Those are difficult bills to pass, and they're high profile. You have a lot of people on both sides of that issue engaged.
And what are the major differences between you and your opponent as far as the issues are concerned, as far as your backgrounds is concerned?
I would say results over rhetoric. He's got rhetoric, I've got results and a track record of success.
And what do you mean by that, as
Well,
far as rhetoric?
Well, he, talks a good game, but he doesn't have a record. He has not been a longtime resident of our community. I've been a lifelong resident of the community, and have relationships with folks in the community. When they have an issue with state government, they come to me and ask me to file legislation to fix that.
And as you know, regarding your record, he has criticized your record when it comes to just your conservative bona fides, your pro-life chops, if you will. What's your response to that?
My response is that's ludicrous. We have one of the most strong abortion bills in the country. We have the heartbeat bill, the trigger bill. The legislation he prefers would give the death penalty to women who've had an abortion. I don't support that. I believe we have ended abortion here in Texas, and no women have been given the death penalty.
And you're referring to his support for equal rights for the unborn?
The equal protection of the unborn, that's code for death penalty for women. Women would be charged with a capital offense. The choices there are either life in prison or the death penalty, even for minors.
And you don't support that?
I do not support that.
And the U.S. Supreme Court, as you know, right now is considering whether mifepristone, the abortion
Correct.
drug, should even continue to still have, whether people should have access to that. What's your thought on that, and how concerned are you that they may uphold that?
I actually passed legislation regarding the chemical abortion pills. And in Texas, they still, before the Dobbs decision, we're still going to have to do in-person visits with patients. There are a lot of complications that can come up with administering those pills. Some women in other states have taken them beyond the period of time in which it's recommended. Somebody at 32 weeks, that is a very dangerous situation, and they're likely to bleed greatly on that. Also, we have prohibited them being mailed in Texas, but we have a federal government who is ignoring federal law currently.
Was there any way for the state to actually enforce this?
As far as the mail,
Yeah.
we're somewhat limited, especially with a Biden White House. If we had a Republican president that had the wherewithal to enforce federal law, the Comstock Act, we could shut that down.
And what do you say to those who say, people should at least have a right, have access to this, and think that the state's gone overboard?
I would say, we have exceptions for the life of the mother in the law already, and I believe the legislation that we've passed here in Texas is sound and good, and it protects women that are having health crises.
If you're reelected, what are your top three priorities?
Top three priorities this next legislative session when we go in, We're going to have yet again another record surplus. I've already been visiting with the governor about increasing the amount of property tax relief that we would have for the citizens in Texas. There is also a hot topic that is brewing right now, has to do with procurement for some of the Medicaid contracts. There are a lot of concerns, and I would like to be one of the ones in the room to help navigate that going into next legislative session. I have a healthcare background. Very few members of the legislature do.
And so talk to me a little bit about that. What specifically are you referring to as it relates to Medicaid?
There, periodically we have to put the contracts out for reprocurement in the state, and we're going through that process right now, and there's a great deal of concern.
About what?
Well, a lot of the recipients are likely to be displaced as far as going into a new plan. You know, we've got a lot of children in this state that are medically fragile, they're technology dependent, that may have to change who their healthcare providers are. And I'm very concerned that those kids are going to fall between the gap.
And so you want to make sure that they continue to have those, the Medicaid?
I want to make sure that they have a safe situation as far as provision of care. Some of those kids are at home on a ventilator. I have a little boy that lives a block away from me that he's 8 years old. He's been on a ventilator at home since birth. And if there are changes to who his providers are, he could fall between the gap. They have private duty nursing as well as very complex medical equipment. That needs to be done with great care.
And I know a lot of Democrats want to expand Medicaid. Do you favor that?
I do not favor the expansion of Medicaid to able-bodied working populations. It's a safety net program. Other states that have expanded have had to cut services to our most needy, vulnerable populations, like the little boy that I was speaking about, in order to be able to afford to cover those able-bodied working single adults.
You spoke before about property tax relief. There is some discussion now, there was some last session as well, but about eliminating the maintenance and operation portion of the school tax. Is that something you support? And if so, how soon? And if so, how would you replace the revenue that would be needed to fund schools and to fund state government?
I would support eliminating the maintenance and operation portion. And for taxpayers of school taxes, that's the lion's share of it. And it would be replaced with state revenue. You know, I do believe that we can do that. It's going to have to be a gradual process to keep all the trains running on time and making sure everything's fully funded.
How soon, as far as gradual, do you think? I mean, are we talking decades?
I don't think it would take decades. I think that it could potentially be done in 4 to 6 years.
There is a lot of discussion on school choice, obviously. The governor has endorsed you. Why do you support taxpayer-funded education savings accounts?
You know, I think parents are in the best position to choose the educational opportunities for their kids. We have some school districts in this state that are failing. In fact, one in the Houston area has been failing for 11 years. And I believe that those families that have kids there ought to have options to be able to educate their children in a place that's not a failing school.
But the state law already exists where the principal is replaced, right? I mean, teachers are replaced if necessary in a failing school. So why is this more necessary?
But we have those laws on the books, and you've still got a district that's been failing for 11 years. Think about the poor child that entered in kindergarten and will graduate next year. They've been in a failing school their entire academic career.
And I also want to ask you about teacher pay raises. Do you support a permanent raise for teachers?
I do.
And do you support a clean bill? Should that be separate from education savings accounts?
I think, teachers are professionals, and we ought to treat them as such. In my lifetime, I had some great teachers that, some that I've maintained lifelong relationships with because of the encouragement and the care that I received from them. So yes, I do believe that we need to increase our teacher pay.
And you mentioned before border security. The Supreme Court is considering SB 4. So if, or not the Supreme Court yet, but it may get there. But if the federal courts eventually rule SB 4 unconstitutional, what should Texas do then?
We need to go back to the drawing board and plug the holes, depending on what the court says on that. But no other state is having to deal with the numbers of people crossing illegally. I've been down to Eagle Pass many times, and right above Shelby Park is a footbridge that people can legally come across that bridge, yet they're risking their lives in turbulent waters to wade across the river to get here. It is an unsustainable situation. The federal government has let us down. They've not done their part.
And with regards to the pro-Palestinian protests we've seen at UT Austin, UT Dallas, UNT, do you support the presidents of UT Dallas, UT Austin, who asked for police to go in and make arrests, and to remove the encampments there? And if so, why?
Absolutely. I support the presidents of those campuses for doing that. It's interesting, some news stories have indicated that the folks that have been on campus protesting are not students at all. They're from off campus. Israel is one of our most important trading partners, even for Texas, not just the country, but for Texas as well. They're God's chosen people. I support the Israeli people.
And what do you make of the concerns expressed by some Jewish students? Does the state have an obligation to protect them on campus?
Absolutely.
And you talked a little bit about the fact that some of these folks are not students.
Correct.
But the state law that I believe you voted for back in 2019 allows for not only freedom of speech and freedom of assembly on college campuses by students, but also members of the community. Mm-hmm. So that in itself, is that an issue for you?
I think that there are folks that will come from outside the campus. This is being characterized as a student-led protest when that's not always the case. You have outside agitators that are stirring things up.
And so for you, is this a question of freedom of speech or disruption?
I believe that they have the freedom of speech just as anyone does in this country. The problem that I have is the disruption that it's creating and the safety issues for our Jewish students.
Let's talk about your vote to impeach Ken Paxton. This is an issue, obviously,
Sure.
in your race. Given the fact that the state Senate cleared the Attorney General of all the articles of impeachment, would you vote the same way?
I believe that no one's above the law. And the vote that I took was to send the matter to the Senate for trial. The first vote that the Senate took when they received the articles of impeachment was whether or not there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. They agreed and proceeded to trial. No one's above the law.
And do you think there need to be changes in the process?
I think that, I, in preparing for that vote, tried to find records in state archives. It's been 100 years since we've done a prior impeachment, and our documentation as far as following a roadmap was somewhat lacking. But I do think that it would have been nice to have had a little more time in the process.
Now, as you know, there's a whistleblower lawsuit against the Attorney General's office. If the Attorney General's office loses the case, should taxpayers foot the bill?
I'm very concerned about that
Why?
because this is due to someone else's activities or actions that the taxpayers would be on the hook. You know, I take the spending of taxpayer dollars very seriously, and I'm concerned that the taxpayers could be on the hook for that.
Speaker Dave Phelan is going through a runoff just like you. Do you support his reelection? And if he is to win on May 28th, would you like to see him remain as Speaker?
I think that that decision will be made in January. I understand we've already got a candidate out there that has declared that they plan to run for that position. I will support whoever the caucus, the Republican caucus, nominates to go forward in January.
And my last question to you is about Democratic committee chairs, which has also been an issue during this campaign and even has been in past sessions. Where are you on this?
If I were Speaker, I probably wouldn't do it. I am glad now that the Senate has no Democrat chairs, but they've always had Democrat chairs as well. If I were Speaker, I probably would not appoint Democrat chairs.
Why not?
I think that we have a Republican majority. We don't have a supermajority. One of the problems that in doing that we may have, one of the unintended consequences, is in order to even pass a simple resolution on the floor of the House, we have to have 100 members present. And I would be concerned that we might be incentivizing quorum breaks.
And why not just then make them defend it if that's the case?
And they did have to defend it when they left 2 years ago during session and went to D.C.
And so that's a concern.
It is a concern from a procedural perspective.
State Representative Stephanie Klick of North Richland Hills, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.